Welcome to the Writing on My Mind podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Emmanuela Stanislaus, author, career strategist, scholar, and diversity consultant. I'm on a mission to create community for women of color graduate students to complete their graduate degrees with confidence. On this podcast, we discuss all things related to the graduate school journey, including the ups and downs of pursuing a graduate degree. I also share personal stories and bring some friends along for revealing conversations about their graduate school journey and provide inspiration for others to level up as grad students. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Writing on My Mind podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Emmanuela, and I am back. I hope you missed me. I totally took some unexpected time off. I'll start off the show with just a little bit of an update, but like I said, I took some time off that was not a part of the plan. I totally meant for this particular episode to go live a few weeks ago, but life has been lifing, and I've been really trying to practice what I preach in terms of giving myself grace. I have a whole Giving Yourself Grace episode, which I'll link in the show notes for you all if you're wanting to check that out. But yeah, I just gave myself grace, and here we are. I planned for myself to record this episode before I went offline for a 9-day cruise with my sisters and mother. And we did this cruise as an early Mother's Day gift to my mother and just to spend some time together. As you all know, we've been through a lot in the past year and just wanted to spend some time together and create some new memories. But because of all of the things I had to get done for my 9-to-5 and my business and things like that, I did not get the chance to record it. And so that meant no new content coming out from the podcast. But we're here now, and I'm happy to be back. I hope that you have been enjoying the last few episodes, which have focused on mentorship, femtorship, and sponsorship relationships. It sounds like the topics have been really resonating with you all from some of the messages that I've been receiving on LinkedIn and Instagram and even emails. And so I couldn't be more excited about that and hope that you are thinking about ways to implement some of the advice while you're pursuing your graduate programs and or careers. One of the questions that I get asked all the time is, how can you network as an introvert? In fact, I recently did a keynote for the UConn School of Business Graduate Student Conference, and I had many of their students ask questions about that during my keynote. I was also a speaker at the Graduate School Success Summit last week, where I spoke about ways to network as a graduate student, and some of the questions were around this very topic of networking as an introvert. So I thought that I would go ahead and dedicate this whole episode to this topic and give you some real advice to help you if you're kind of nervous about networking or feel like there isn't a space for you to network as someone who identifies as an introvert. Many of my graduate students who I coach share how uncomfortable they are when it comes to networking. And like I said, want to give some of the advice that I've shared with them that has helped them to navigate that world. And speaking of networking, we are building this Writing on My Mind community, which I consider a network. I love getting notes from you about how much you love the podcast and how some of the topics resonate with you, which keeps me going more than you know. So please keep those messages coming or going. I don't know which one goes, but keep them flowing my way, please, and thank you. And along those lines, I need to ask you for a favor. This is a free podcast to you, and I definitely want to keep it that way. It's also a podcast that I make no money off of. I know that there are a lot of very popular podcasters and celebrities who have signed major multi-million dollar podcast deals, but this isn't one of those, nor do I aspire to be one of them. I love being independent and in control of what I put out there and how I put it out and when I put it out, right? But if you love this podcast, I would love it if you could rate and review it, which costs nothing and makes a big impact in the reach and has the potential to help other graduate students of color find this resource. So I know I've asked this before in the past, but just want to make that plea to you all. And then if you are able and willing, you can also donate to the podcast in appreciation of the free content that I provide you here on this platform by visiting paypal.me/Dr. Emmanuela, which is also linked in the show notes for you to access. You can send $5, $10, whatever you feel called to do, which would really be appreciative. Like I said, I do not make money off of the podcast. I do it to help others, to help graduate students of color. So I really want to thank you for being a part of the Writing on My Mind community. I want to keep this going and really have appreciated your support over the years. So that was my quick little commercial break. So back to the topic at hand, which is networking as an introvert. First off, I want to say that you can totally network as an introvert and gain amazing benefits. And you might be asking, how do I know? Believe it or not, I identify as introverted. I know that I've shared this in the past on the podcast, but I am super introverted. I often joke and say that my whole house is introverted. My husband is, even my dog is. Like, we're all super quiet. We get a ton of energy from being by ourselves and just, being quiet in our own little corner. There are times where I forget that I have a dog because he's that quiet and that to himself, right? So you might be wondering, what is an introvert? When you look up the term introvert, you will see a definition that includes being shy or afraid of public speaking or public spaces. That definition isn't necessarily what I am referring to or something that I think is a true definition of someone who is introverted. I prefer the definition associated with the Myers-Briggs assessment, which is a well-known assessment that was developed by a mother-daughter psychologist duo. In this assessment, one of the categories involves two types, which is introverted or extroverted. The way that they describe these categories is how you generate your energy. And with introverts generate energy from being to themselves to recharge, while extroverts gain energy from being among others. And so when you think about that, it's really about energy management. So that's how I want to challenge you to think about the term. There is nothing wrong with being one or the other. And in fact, introverts really get a bad rap in a lot of different ways. There are many biases related to introvertedness. Oftentimes, folks are rewarded in the hiring process and even in the promotion process, which I think is totally unfair, right? There are a lot of leaders out there and change makers that are introverts. And I think that it's really time for folks to stop having these biases in terms of who gets access to whatever opportunities. If you are someone who identifies as being introverted, I just want to say that you are amazing the way that you are. There is nothing wrong with you. There is nothing that you can't do. And in terms of networking, you just need to be aware and cognizant of managing your energy. So I have 7 pieces of advice for you if you identify as an introvert and are wanting tips to network as an introvert. But before I get into the list of 7, I want to say that the first thing before I get into these 7 that you have to do is to establish your goals with networking. Like I said, there are a number of benefits to networking, including finding mentors, finding a job or career opportunity, collaborating on a project, or maybe just expanding your network. There are more, advantages to networking, but these are some of the most common reasons and goals for networking. So I want you to think about, what are yours? What are your goals? Do you want to become an entrepreneur and get more clients? Do you want to go into industry and pursue a particular role, whether it's product manager or in research and development? Whatever it is, come to terms with what that is. And you can have numerous, right? It doesn't have to just be one. It can be a combination of a couple of these. Once you figure out what your goals are, that will help you to figure out your approach to networking and help you to be targeted in the types of events that you want to attend and how you navigate the networking opportunities that are presented to you or that you decide to engage in. So that is my first thing, is to establish your goals. And then from there, you can go ahead and follow one or more of these tips that I have for you to networking as an introvert. The first one is connect one-on-one. I know from experience how hard it can be to network in group settings. And I would say that group settings aren't necessarily the best settings for introverts to network in. In those group settings, you have things like people competing to make a good impression. You also have extroverts who are in their element in these group settings, right? They could be interpreted as larger than life in these types of settings. And so you don't want to feel like you're competing with others in these types of settings. So one-on-one would be the best thing. As an introvert, I tend to be someone that people consider a good listener. And you might relate to this as well, where a lot of times you're on the receiving side of a conversation where you may not even be able to get a ton of information out about yourself, right? Because someone is probably dominating the conversation. So find ways to meet with others one-on-one in smaller, intimate settings. What does that look like for you? It may be inviting someone to get coffee, or if you happen to be in a group setting, then approaching folks who are on their own and not with others. It may also mean meeting up one-on-one virtually. And so you'll just have to navigate what seems more comfortable to you and then make those things happen. And it may have to come from you initiating those kinds of things, but it is totally okay to do so. Why would that be beneficial? Like I said, you will be one-on-one with a person that you want to get to know, or you want them to get to know you, which that should definitely be the goal of you meeting with folks, to be able to talk to them and share more about yourself and more about your interests and your goals and things like that, so that they can learn more about that and see how they can help you accomplish your goals. But you also don't get that competition, right? You don't have a ton of distractions and a ton of stimuli that will take you off course. So that's number one. Number two is to take advantage of digital networking opportunities. So when I'm referring to digital networking opportunities, I'm talking about LinkedIn, Twitter, and other online networking sites. And the reason why I say this is because networking online might be an easier tactic for you if you're someone that identify as introverted. In those spaces, you can reach out to folks that you admire or who are in roles that you aspire to take on. You can provide updates, you can strike up conversations and share your expertise in these spaces. And you can do all of this from the comfort of your home, which is such a plus. I do this all the time. And One tip that I would say that I used in terms of networking is while I was reading articles for my dissertation, if I've read someone's work that very much resonated with me or my approach to viewing things, I would go on Twitter and look them up and follow them if they had an account, or go on LinkedIn and follow them. Or if there was a conference that I couldn't attend, I would follow along with the hashtags and then, see what information is being shared and find folks that I can follow from there. And if I was going to the conference the following year, that would be a way for me to connect with them moving forward, right? Like reaching out to them before the conference, letting them know that I'd love to connect with them or grab coffee or whatever the case might be, and then connect with them in real life at that conference. And so I would definitely recommend doing something of that nature to find people that you would like to be a part of your network. And stay connected with them, follow up with them, provide updates in terms of what's going on in your world, or congratulate them if you see something's happening in their space. So that is my second piece of advice, leveraging the online space, which will allow you to network with folks a little easier than a face-to-face, in-person networking event might. The third piece of advice that I have is to mentally prepare for in-person networking opportunities. So this is so important and critical, and this is something that I do all the time to hype myself up, right? And you have to explore and decide what's best for you to get you in the networking mood. Is it meditating, or is it going for a walk? Is it having your own personal dance party, which is my go-to? It is listening to hype music and having a dance party. So I would encourage you to put a playlist together that includes music that makes you feel confident and will help get you in the mood to network. And so here are some of my favorite hype music that I listen to before going to a networking event or going into a speaking engagement, and even going into interviews, right? And so some of them include I'm That Girl by Beyonce, All the Way Up by Fat Joe and Remy Ma, Savage by Megan Thee Stallion, Mama Said Knock You Out by LL Cool J, I'm a Boss by Meek Mill, Can't Tell Me Nothing by Kanye, Flawless by Beyonce, and Public Service Announcement by Jay-Z. So do with that list what you will, but I tell you, those songs really help me to get excited. They really, get me in the mood and make me feel like anything is possible. There are more to that list, but I'll just leave it at that. And, I'm just curious to know if you all use hype music to get prepared for anything big in your world. So definitely let me know. Send me a DM on Instagram or share and tag me on Instagram so that I can add your songs to my list as well. So that is number 3. Get mentally prepared for your in-person networking opportunities. Number 4 is kind of related to the one that I just shared, and it is to have a game plan and expectations for your networking opportunities. So if you find yourself in a situation where you have to attend an in-person networking event, you might immediately feel nervous about the setting, right? I totally get it. I feel that same way. But there are some steps that you can take beyond the, mentally preparing for the event that can make it a more enjoyable experience. So first is establishing the goals leading up to that event, right? So for example, before I attend and even before I register for an event, I think about, why should I attend the event? What am I trying to accomplish by attending this event? How will attendance help me to accomplish my goals, whether it be personal, professional, or with my business? And then from there, once I reflect on those questions, that helps me to remove any blockers or resistance that I may have had initially with the event. From there, if there is a list of attendees, I want to make sure that I see it and create a plan, right? Who do I want to meet and what do I want to talk to them about? Maybe I might set a goal to meet with 3 people, right? And I would definitely advise you to have a goal of whether it's specific folks that you want to connect with or a number of folks that you want to connect with. And the biggest reason for that is it just helps you to set expectations. You're not going into a networking event thinking that you will get to speak to even half the people that are there. That's not a good goal. Like, you should have something that's very manageable and that is really tied to the goals that you want to get out of that event. So that would be my advice to you, is to go in there with a goal. If you can get a list of attendees ahead of time, look at that and target whether it's 3, 5 people that you want to connect with. And once you do that, you have that goal, right? You go into that event, you speak to those 3 people that you wanted to speak to, and then you're done, which is a great feeling. You have a focus, and when you're done, you can relax and not have that same amount of pressure that you had before to meet and connect with others. You can just connect with people, like just chat with them without feeling, oh, okay, I have to connect with all of these different people. And if you make another connection beyond your goal, great. That is gravy or cherry on top, right? So that is my 4th piece of advice, is setting a game plan and having expectations for yourself so that you can feel successful at the end of the event. Number 5 is to find time to decompress, and that is during the event and after the event, right? So during the event, I encourage you to take breaks. As I shared in the beginning, you'll have to be mindful of your energy as someone who's introverted. So stepping away from groups that are not tied to your goals is a very good tactic to do. Or perhaps after meeting one person, find a quiet corner, right, to take notes or to download the information that you received so that you can have a thoughtful follow-up with them that includes topics that you talked about during the networking event. So like I said, find a quiet corner, go outside, step outside, find the restroom, do whatever it takes so that you can compose yourself, you can get a little boost of energy so that you can go back out there and knock out the other networking goals and milestones that you had for yourself for that event. So that is number 5. During the event, finding time to break. And then following the event, do whatever you need to do to rest. After networking events, I feel wiped out. I feel like there is nothing left to give. After I give a talk, my adrenaline is going. I don't want to cook. I don't want to do anything. And so if you can prepare ahead of time for what you might feel afterwards, that would be great. Otherwise, veg out, whether it's reading a book, maybe you go to sleep, maybe you watch a show. Do whatever brings you joy. And whatever that is, there's no right or wrong. And so that would be number 5 for me, which is find breaks throughout the networking event and then also find a way to decompress after the networking event. Number 6, in terms of networking as an introvert, a lot of times folks don't know where to start. And that is my 6th piece of advice. Start with helping others. If you're nervous about networking, one way to approach networking as an introvert is to offer your help. Think about it in terms of your expertise, and we all have a level of expertise, right? For example, mine could be coaching. Maybe I'm talking to someone and it comes about that they're struggling with job search. I could, give them a piece of advice, right? there in the networking setting, or I do a lot of traveling, and so maybe they're about to do a trip or they're thinking about taking a trip, and I'm able to share some piece of advice that can help them prepare for their trip. What is something that you're good at that you can offer up to help someone else? Approach networking from that angle. We all have something that we can offer, and this is a way that you can build a relationship with someone, is through offering to help if you see that they need help with something. That is number 6, approaching networking by way of helping someone else. And then my final tip, which is number 7, and I forgot to say this at the beginning, but there is no like rhyme or reason to the order of this list. I'm just sharing it. But tip number 7 for networking as an introvert is to network with other introverted people. This might sound crazy, but why not? Why not approach other introverted folks? You're not the only one that's introverted at these networking events, right? And so if you see someone who is on their own, or they seem like they don't even want to be there sometimes, right? Go up to them, strike up a conversation. They may understand your perspective more than you know, and can provide some valuable support and guidance for you. Together, you can navigate networking challenges and share strategies and build up this relationship that is mutually beneficial. So that is my last tip, is to not ignore your fellow introverts that are in the space with you, and to approach them, strike up your conversation, and who knows, you may surprise one another and be able to support each other along this journey of networking. And so those are my pieces of advice to you. I wanted to make them short, sweet, and approachable, and things that you can implement pretty quickly and easily. And so hopefully these tips are things that you feel like you can incorporate into your next networking event. Some other things that I would definitely encourage you to do, especially around the whole how do you strike a conversation, think about it in terms of making a human connection. This is another human being. So appeal to their humanity, talk about all kinds of things, not just work. We are more than just work. We're at work for a third of the day, right? Life is what happens after that outside of work. And so I would definitely encourage you all to talk about the things that you care about, right? If you are new to navigating this space, I think one key thing is to stay abreast of pop culture, sports, and other things that can help you to engage in small talk. Of course, you have certain interests, but when you're in these networking settings, it'll be good to talk about things that are current events. Some things that I do that can help you stay on top of current events is to subscribe to your local newspaper, where they send you an email daily on what's going on locally as well as nationally. There's also the Daily Skim, which I subscribe to, and I get an email every day, and it gives you bite-sized information in terms of what's going on in the news, right? So the idea is that you read this in 15 minutes and you're caught up on some of the big pieces of news for the day. So I would definitely recommend that. And then if you're listening to this podcast, my guess is that you enjoy podcasts as well. And so a podcast that I like to listen to kind of get a sense of what's going on is The Daily. And that is run by the New York Times. And they have a new episode every day, kind of highlighting a different topic. And it just keeps me kind of well-versed on what's going on. So those are just some quick tips on how you can stay on top of what's going on and be able to have conversations that are related to what's going on in these networking spaces. So I'll go ahead and try and link all of those things in the show notes as well, so that you can access them and subscribe however you feel inclined to do. If you're looking for more networking advice, get yourself a copy of my ebook, Taking Charge, a career guide for graduate students. Visit takingchargeebook.com. I'll also link that in the show notes for you all. If one of these tips stood out to you or was an aha moment for you, I'd like to know. I want to hear from you. So share it on Instagram or LinkedIn and tag me so that I can share it with our community. I hope that you enjoyed this episode and heard a piece of advice that you hope to implement in your networking efforts. Don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, and share with others so that we can grow this community. And I'll see you on the next episode. Bye. That's a wrap. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Writing on My Mind podcast. If you'd like to support the podcast, make sure you follow the show wherever you listen to podcasts, rate the show, and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. You can also donate to the show by clicking the support link in the show notes. Your donations help me to continue to put out new episodes to help support you and other women of color graduate students. I'd also love it if you can spread the word to other women of color graduate students to grow our community. Also, be sure to follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter at Dr. Emmanuela. See you on the next episode.